KMSU.
Hi, may I speak to Dustin, please?
This is Dustin.
Hi, this is Amazing Kong.
Amazing Kong, how you doing today?
Pretty good, how are you?
I'm excellent. It's an honor to have you on.
Thank you.
Well, I will, I guess, start at the beginning and, kind of get your sense as to why you wanted to be in the wrestling business. How did you get started?
Well, I was a fan in the 80s as a kid, and even as a teenager, I kind of wanted to get into wrestling, but I was discouraged by my mom, who was, a producer and a coordinator in Hollywood. But then during the Attitude Era and in my 20s, once I was an adult and had, my own apartment, my own car, my own business, no one could really stop me because that's what your 20s are for, right? To fool around and see what you could become.
Yeah, and you obviously jumped in feet first and wrestled in Japan for, several years. What was that experience like?
It was like sink or swim, A lot of doors opened for me when I decided to become a wrestler. It was like being at the right place at the right time. And I got plucked from L.A. and planted in Tokyo and thrown into the ring. At the time, all I knew how to do was, run the ropes and throw a clothesline and take a bump because I had just took my first bump, barely 8 weeks prior. So to go from taking your first bump and then 2 months later having a main event in Kawasaki against one of the greatest, female wrestlers of all is, you either got to sink or swim. But, right before the match, this is when 8 Mile was, popular. I popped me in some Eminem and pumped myself up to go out there and do the job.
Yeah, and I know just to being in Japan, in any facet kind of gives you extra credibility, I'm sure, getting into the business. So does that help you with, kind of the paying your dues process?
It certainly does. There are different ways you can pay your dues. In America, you pay your dues by jumping in the car and driving for hundreds and hundreds of miles, to shows in, different corners of the country and getting paid bupkis, sometimes in hot dogs or, saltine crackers. In Japan, you pay your dues by, respecting, and I mean totally respecting and handing over, basically all control of your career to the veterans. And, you entrust that they're going to teach you the tools that you need to make it and survive and thrive in the business, and they do. So, you scrub the floors, you clean their underwear, you clean their backside, you do what you have to do. You take whatever, crap that they give you, but in turn, they make sure that the student may not surpass the teacher, but, at least will be, lateral.
Yeah, for sure. I know a lot of the American wrestling fans probably first caught your stuff, when you went to TNA Wrestling. So from when you were in Japan, was that kind of an easier transition then to make it into the States?
No knock to the, working in the States, but yes, working in Japan is like learning how to drive in a stick, because if you could drive a stick, you could drive anything. You could just jump in and drive anything. So working out there, coming here was a fairly easy transition for me. It was a wake-up call for others that I worked, but for me, it was certainly easier on my body.
Well, and I really think the Knockouts division in TNA at that time was usually the best part of the show. So, I mean, did you really kind of feel like a sense of, camaraderie with the rest of the women in the locker room to kind of show the office that, women's wrestling can be taken seriously?
Definitely. We as a roster, women and men, decided that we were going to support one another and make sure that this product gets over. We focused on building the best product, out there. And, to this day, people respect the work. TNA has some of the best workers in the world. Their work is bar none, top notch. And everyone there has heart. You have to have a lot of heart to work there.
Well, and I know that you left TNA under, unfavorable circumstances, so we're assuming you probably won't be coming back there anytime soon?
I don't believe so. It would take a serious mediator for me to iron out my grievances with the company. I still have mad love with the company. It gave me my start in America. as far as, mass, media, on Spike being on American television. It gave me my start. I'll never forget that, and I'll never, forget Dixie for that, even though we have differences of opinions right now. But, when I first joined her company, she was a completely different CEO than when I left, and I'm hoping that her attitude will change. I actually heard that it has a little bit of her. She took a really big bump through a table recently.
Yeah.
Matter of respect to that. So it seems like when times are, I heard that their contract with Spike is like, iffy. So it's back down to the humble roots, and that's where you need to go if you want to thrive. You got to stay humble. So I'm wishing them well. I'm hoping the tides will turn for them.
And after you left TNA, I know you did some other independent work, and you even worked here in the new AWA in Minnesota. What are your memories of working here in Minnesota?
I remember the cold. I remember we were in where Prince filmed his Purple Rain.
Sure, First Avenue, yep.
Yes, and I remember being on the stage and reenacting, a lot of scenes from Purple Rain, and just popping for being in Minnesota. And everywhere I turned, if a short person, walked by, I would look to see if they were Prince, because I'm a big Prince fan. But I remember, the crowd was insane. If you're not from Minnesota, you think Minnesota is just like a bunch of forest and trees. No, you guys are an actual metropolitan city with a lot of people and a lot of fun people. And the crowd there, they popped it off. They popped it off there that night.
So the Prince kind of outweighs the goofy accents and the cold, maybe.
A little bit, yeah. The people are down to earth. I mean, it was a group of us outside talking. I don't know if you remember that night. There was a bunch of us outside just rapping that night, and everyone's just down to earth and cool.
Well, we know you eventually made your way to the WWE, and you worked as Kharma, but you were only there for a short while. But was that difficult? You mentioned earlier kind of that strong style from Japan. Was it hard to make that adjustment? Because it seems like women's wrestling in the WWE is more kind of just models and, kind of a novelty sort of thing.
Actually, no. I mean, the girls there have heart as well. And they were excited and ready to, go on this mission that, bam, okay, we're going to change the whole world's perspective on what, quote-unquote, diva wrestling is supposed to be, the box that people continuously put the divas in, even if they have dynamite matches. It's like, okay, yeah, we got Kharma now. Now we're about to do this. There was only one instance. I had a match with Alicia Fox, and she jugged her shoulder a little bit. People made a bigger deal out of it than even she did. But no, she's a tough cookie. Everyone on that roster that I experienced was a tough cookie. Natty has heart. No, they were down. They were ready. They still are.
So then do you think maybe it's just the office that has a hard time seeing them being credible, or maybe just the title divas, I think, kind of causes a lot of issues for most fans, too?
I think there is trepidation. It's a gamble. Sometimes you have to go with the tried and true formula of sex sells, people want to watch, men do the heavy lifting and bring on women for the novelty. Not saying that's what it is every time, but, the girls dip their toe in the serious business a lot, and they, advocate for themselves a lot. I wish that maybe as a group, as a whole, if they pushed as a group to really, seriously say this, we're going to change the aspect of women's wrestling and how people, perceive us, then one, I'd probably be back, and two, people probably would.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously, as you've proven in your time with TNA or even, all-female federations like Shimmer, I mean, it obviously can work if people just give it a chance.
It could work if people give it a chance. When the Knockouts came out, people didn't know what to expect. We were just women's wrestling. Well, we got together and decided to put the product first, and no one put themselves first, especially, well, at the beginning anyway. No one put themselves first. We put the product first and put the fans first and put wrestling first. And that's what the fans, were receptive to.
Well, I got to ask you about your appearance in the Royal Rumble. I was actually in the crowd, and when I saw you come out, I mean, the crowd went crazy. What are your memories of that? That must have been quite a trip to wind up in the Royal Rumble.
I remember trying not to mist up in the eyes when I heard the roar of the crowd because it was extremely deafening. Was extremely deafening. And I had to remember that I was Kharma and not Margaret from Hustle, and I had a job to do. The job was to be mean and go in there and face the awesome Dolph Ziggler, who is just like one of my favorite wrestlers ever to watch. And if you want to become a wrestler, I highly suggest that you study him inside and out. And it was just surreal because it is the Royal Rumble. It's not just the pay-per-view. It is the Royal Rumble. You know, it's like getting a snap in the Super Bowl.
Sure.
Hello. You know, it was awesome.
So it sounds like maybe you might be returning someday if the opportunity came up?
If the opportunity came up, if the stars align, I believe I will.
Well, I know that you have a lot of stuff going on now, and I just read, I think it was a Kickstarter campaign that you've just started and a lot of other projects. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I just started a Kickstarter a few days ago, and it's a project really dear to my heart. A lot of you guys know me as Kharma, and, you know, the whole sense of karma is, you know, you get what you put out into the world. And one thing people don't know about me is I like doing good deeds, and I like to see good deeds being done. And it gives you a really good, you know, self-satisfaction. You know what I'm trying to say. You get self-satisfied when you do a good deed. So what I'm raising money for is to build a website where you could potentially track the good deeds you do and how other people pay it forward when you ask them to. So we're raising money now, and we have some great rewards, you know, from T-shirts all the way up to accompanying me to the ring as my manager we'll come out and throw a show, a personalized show for you in your hometown. So I'm inviting everyone to come to the Kickstarter page and look up the Good Kharma Project or visit my Twitter at Kharma, Kharma. And, of course, everyone that Facebooks, if you look up the Kia Stevens Project, and just visit the page and see what it's all about because, you know, no matter what you do, a good deed is a good deed, and it feels good.
Yeah, definitely an interesting take. Most people use Kickstarter and those sorts of sites to kind of further their own personal projects, but you're using it to help others, so kind of a reverse sort of take on that.
A wee bit. I mean, like I said, there's like a self-gratification when you do something good. You feel real good. Like, I get embarrassed when people thank me when I do something good, and, you know, people thank me. I get, you know, kind of embarrassed. But I do often wonder what happened, you know, how they received that, and, you know, if it did make a difference. And with this, you could, you know, get a peek at what did happen, you know, not necessarily get a personal thank you from someone, but you could see, you know, how far that little good deed that you did, how far it went.
Yeah, it seems like a lot more people would probably donate to charities and that sort of thing if they could see the direct, you know, response to where their money went. So that's awesome.
Exactly. Like every year I used to, well, I still do, give to Toys for Tots. And I would always wonder, you know, how long did that kid have a toy? Did they like it? You know, was it the right color? So I wish, you know, that I had a stamp or something that I could stamp, you know, bam, a serial number where, you know, the kid or the parent can go in and say, hey, this, you know, Good Kharma serial number bought my kid a Toys for Tot toy. It was awesome. He played with it. When he unwrapped it, his, you know, face lit up. Whoever you are, thank you. And, you know, just anonymously give and see how your giving affects people.
For sure. Yeah, definitely an excellent idea. And are you doing anything on the wrestling side of things or any upcoming events that you want to mention?
Yes, I'll be at WrestleCade on the 28th. In the Carolinas, I'll be facing Lady Tapham, and that's going to be interesting. It's going to be two strong style girls going at it. And after that, I'll be taking some time off. I'm working against an injury to bulging discs, so I'm going to let my body rest during the winter. Bones get brittle during the winter.
Well, yeah, it's great to hear that you got so much stuff going on, and We have a lot of wrestlers on the show, and usually before we let them go, we ask them if you could wrestle anyone from the past, who would it be?
I just got asked this question, and I'm going to go with Mae Young.
Okay. Now, are we talking...
She would definitely tie me up in knots.
Sure.
That would be awesome to be tied up in knots with Mae Young, right?
Are we talking the back in her heyday, or like the...
Back in her heyday,
okay.
At the height of her career, bam, locking up with Mae Young.
Yeah, for sure. Well, again, Kong, it's been awesome having you on, and we're looking forward to the Kickstarter campaign, and hopefully that works out, and seeing you hopefully back in the ring somewhere here in the Midwest soon. Is there anything you want to leave the listeners with? Any final thoughts?
Smile at someone today. It just might make a difference.
Wonderful. Again, thanks so much for being on with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Have a good one.
All right, you too. Thank you. Bye-bye.